Good morning, everybody. Thanks for making it out. Real quick before we get going, while we get settled and figure out seating, just thank you very much to the Brand Innovators group. A quick round of applause for them. They put on a heck of a show. This whole event has been fantastic. And I'll try to get out of your way here. I was really excited to get a chance to speak and talk with the group and get to introduce this awesome panel, and I'll turn it over to them to introduce themselves. But at first they asked me if I wanted to do a quick panel, and it's like, yeah, absolutely, with the Brand Innovators Group. And then they said, you're going to talk about behind the brand with J&J, and I thought, it's kind of odd. I'm with inMobi. Why do you want me to talk about J&J? And then Izzy was quick to correct me, and it made more sense to have them. So I'll let you guys go down the horn. Just introduce yourselves real quick, and then we'll get going with some questions.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Westin, and I am the Director of Digital Experience for U.S. Self-Care. So that includes our OTC brands like Tylenol, Motrin, wound care like phenomenal brands like Band-Aid, and oral care like Listerine, and as well as allergy like Zyrtec.
Yeah, allergies. Hi, I'm Matt Fantazier, Director of Digital Experience for our skin health business, which is brands like Neutrogena, Clean and Clear, Rogaine, Aveeno, and our baby portfolio.
Hi. Woo. Woo. Hi, Tyler Rochwerg, Senior Manager of Digital Experience for skin health brands, all the ones that Matt just mentioned.
Hey guys, I'm Elisa Burguera. I am the Manager of Performance Marketing for Self-Care, so I work with Lauren and all those awesome brands.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Well, to kick us off, you guys are a relatively new team, the digital experience team here with J&J, and you guys helped kind of curate what this team is, what it looks like. Can you give us a little background on why you developed it and what your charter is and how you're working with the group?
Yeah, so all of this started really in 2020. So some things happened in the world, and we had to figure out not only how do we grow with digital acceleration, but how do we make this a competitive advantage for us over the next 5 to 10 years. We don't want to just ride the wave. We want to have a step change and be best in class. So we did an assessment across literally every function, not just marketing, supply chain, IT, sales, and figuring out what does it take for us to really win in a new digital environment in the future. And one of the key outputs of that was it takes people. It takes experts in different areas to work together hand in hand with the brands to execute and really drive these tools. And this team was created less than a year ago. Our jobs did not exist this time last year, and Lauren and I started in April. These guys started over the summer, and we've been off and running ever since.
Very good, very good. And same thing with digital's not going away. We've probably heard a lot of sessions about it over the last couple of days, right? A lot of groups are being formed like this around the industry. A lot of COEs are being formed around the industry. You guys were quick to point out that you're not a COE to me. Can you give us a little context behind that and what you mean by that? And
Yeah, so when our team was formed, we really thought about what are the things that we can do in the short term versus long term, and COE versus execution. Our team is very much execution. So in Johnson & Johnson Consumer Health, we do actually have a center of excellence. It's called the Consumer Experience Organization. They're really wonderful. They focus on capability. So when we think about things like shoppable media, they find the best partners for us to work with. Our team works really, really closely with the brands to understand their strategies. So what that means is we come in to execute, where we think about, well, let's find the high-value audience that the brand has said we need to go find. We're going to use the partner that the Consumer Experience Organization has set. They're setting the capability, but we go execute with our media agency to bring that to life in the best way possible. So we're very much executing and bring it to life. And I would say some of the things that we've done as our team has been formed in the short term is really focused on how do we go focus on things like search and retail media and digital shelf and our owned properties. How do we go in and find things that we can get wins on with bringing in experts like Elisa and Tyler into the team? How can we go get wins? And now we're also focusing more on long term as how we start doing ways of working and integrating ourselves a little bit more. So it's very much short term wins, long term gains, but we're very much in partnership with our Center of Excellence as we go about.
Fair. fair. And Lisa and Tyler, you guys are newer on the team. What drew you guys to the team? Why join the digital experience group?
Yeah, I can give an internal perspective. So I've been with J&J about 8.5 years, and for me, this team was the first time I'd really seen Johnson & Johnson invest in digital in a big way in terms of bringing on incremental resources and not building a COE like we were talking about, but really hiring practitioners. Like, our team is made up of practitioners and experts across a number of disciplines, from retail media to content creation to search and paid social. And that makes all the difference because we're not necessarily consulting, but we're actually doing the work.
On my end, from an external perspective, so most of my career I've been dedicated to digital, but more on the D2C and retail branding. So when they first approached me, I was like, do I really want to go into OTC? Like, is it fun doing digital marketing there? But as I learned more about the role and what Johnson & Johnson was trying to build, I thought it was really interesting that a company that has been here for so long and that it's so large that they decided that they really wanted to focus on this area and they wanted to hire a team of experts. To Tyler's point, not only different expertise in areas, but also background. So our team, we have people coming from agencies, other retail brands. We also have other CPGs. So we really have a diverse background of experts that is helping us push the envelope, ask the right questions, and transform digitally the business.
Very good. And you touched on a point I wanted to bring up. 130-year plus history of J&J, right? Pretty established marketing org and structure. What has been the most eye-opening, surprising, and challenging part of building your team in year one of integrating with a really established marketing crew?
I think what's important there is not trying to do digital for digital's sake or try to say, hey, we're going to parachute in and fix everything or do whatever. I think what could have been challenging, but how we approached it was, how do we integrate into what has made us great for 130 years? So the first thing we did as a team was really understand, what do the brands need? We start there. We actually do not have team goals. We adopt the goals 100% of the brands we work on. So really establishing that up front, making sure the things we're working on are the things that are going to drive the business, and then our partners know that we are there 100% to support them, has made all the difference. But I think that can be what trips up these types of groups and big companies, is that, and yeah, let's be real, there are a lot of ways in working that we are working through. There's like 90% of Lauren and I's job is sifting through this, but you have to put in that work, and it's worked, but it's just navigating another team and a huge company. It's like one more thing, and that's what we strive to not be.
Fair. But on the one more thing, I want to talk creative for a second. So on the creative lens, especially in digital, it's really nimble, it's really fast, there's a lot of different formats. How do you stay consistent with what the brand is doing, having a digital charter and knowing, there's all these formats and the tone of, I know you guys were out late at the TikTok party last night, so,
Allegedly.
Allegedly out late at the TikTok party, but, kind of the tone of the platform that you're on and mirroring that and trying to stay true and authentic to J&J.
Yeah. Creative is definitely a challenge, and consistency is something we work a lot on. I have 3 words for you: brand style guide. We spend a lot of time building really robust style guides for our brands, and we use that as the Bible to work with all the different partners, because there's so many agencies and so many partners and new employees coming on. And if you want to maintain that consistency you're talking about in creative, that's key. And it gets as detailed as like the typefaces and font weighting to like, what's the brand voice and the tone, and who are we and who are we not? And so we put a lot of time in building these out. And for Neutrogena, we have a style guide that's about 100 slides, and we spend a lot of time training employees and new agency partners on that to maintain that creative consistency.
All right, well, that's good. Discipline, I love it. That's good. And then on the performance side, Lisa, if I can ask you, we've heard actually a lot of panelists have talked about this, and the rise of data and how much smarter the industry has gotten, especially in the digital side, which is a blessing and curse. You get the art and the science. It's a little bit heavier on the science side right now. It seems like we've pivoted a little bit higher on the science side. How are you utilizing learnings across platforms within the learnings, particularly thinking about performance? Leveraging what you're learning from search and applying it to retail media and some other facets. How are you leaning in on the data side and but yet maintaining some art and heart?
Yeah, so definitely as a performance marketing professional, that is a great question because the center of my role is data driven. So right now what we've been trying to do, my team and I, is understand what are the data points that are available and how can we make it accessible to everyone across the organization so that we not only have data points coming in from digital but also from other areas, sales trends, what's happening in the marketing, what's happening on focus groups, and how can we utilize all those data points to build campaigns that are successful. And how can we share that information better across the business? So a really good example is we recently put together a pilot for Motrin where we brought together different expertises internally in one place, and we wanted to pilot a campaign where we were very fast to market, very creative, very nimble, test different messaging creative to see and understand what worked for a brand like Motrin on social media. So while we were running that campaign, we were promoting different products within that portfolio, and we found that after identifying what were the key KPIs and what success looked like, one of the products was significantly underperforming on that campaign. So we started digging in, and actually our consumer was talking to us. They were telling why that ad was not resonating to them, and that was fascinating because that data has always been there, but there hasn't been anyone that is digging deep to see why things are not performing, and that's now why our team is here. So we were able to not only pivot and change the messaging and the creative to make it resonate better with the consumer and continue testing in different iterations to see what worked, but then we were also able to share that feedback with the brand team, and that was very enlightening for them because they didn't really know that the position and the messaging that we had for that specific product wasn't resonating. So we started asking ourselves, like, who is our target? Who is buying our products? What needs is our product meeting? And we were able to have a better understanding and then adapt that messaging not only across advertising, but our site, our retail pages, and improve that experience with the consumer.
Very good. It's a great story.
I wanted to say, I think that's amazing that you told that entire story without saying anything proprietary, but you went very specific.
I was really trying.
She's a pro. She's a pro.
We're like, where's she going with this?
They all got a little tight. Do you notice that? So on the media side, you guys are all things digital, but we've seen such a let's say acceleration, but it's been happening for a number of years on the mobile front. Consumers spending 4.5 hours a day on their mobile device, and particularly CPGs being very heavy in mobile. Around 70% of their digital expenditures are happening in mobile. How are you guys thinking about devices or screens?
Yeah, I love this question. Just like Matt said, we're not doing digital for digital's sake. We're not doing mobile for mobile's sake. We want to be where consumers are, and right now they are on their phones, which means that we have a few inches to communicate who our brands are. So we show up on TikTok and Pinterest, all the way to thinking about when you want to go get your Motrin or whatever it is, you might be going to build your cart on Target to do pickup, or you might be doing last mile delivery, you might be going Instacart, you might want to deliver to your house. We have to think about how we are showing up, how we are building equity, how we are building brands, and how we are converting consumers all within a few inches of space. So that means that things like our UX UI design becomes extremely important. It means that things like mobile optimized images become extremely important. And we're really thinking through each one of those touch points along the journey, and how can we make sure that we're not looking at our computer screens and saying, oh, that's beautiful. We're actually looking at our own phones to make sure that it really resonates and shows up for consumers in a really, really authentic but powerful way.
I'll simplify my perspective on it, is that everything's mobile. When you asked me this question, we talked about this yesterday, it kind of took me back. I was like, I don't even think about this anymore. I literally had to think about an answer to the question. So we don't talk about it because everything is mobile. So I think it's just the mindset of that's it. That is the canvas. That is where our consumer is. Full stop.
Love that. As inMobi. Of course, I love that.
Love the self-serving question. I see you.
Come on. You really quickly ran through the shopper modality that is happening in the space with every channel to where and all the journeys that consumers can take now, and that's really accelerated at the same time that your group has come in to be this rigor around the discipline around digital. But the shoppers are changing constantly, and there's a new distribution platform. It seems like weekly out there. How are you guys adapting and kind of staying with all of that while still staying honest to your core mission?
really quickly, I want to give a shout out to some people in our consumer experience organization helping us build capabilities because they are finding the right partners for us every day.
Yes. And we have to look, I mean, it does evolve literally every day. And I think it's important for us to look at the landscape, try a lot of things, but be smart about it. So that's why we do work with our Center of Excellence team that is looking across the entire enterprise. And it's important for us to try things. Most aren't going to work. Most aren't going to be the thing that shows up on the annual report. But if we don't try it, we're going to miss the one that does. So I think it's important for us to keep testing, have a certain amount of our budget dedicated to that, be open to it, and always have the strategy in mind, because not everything needs to be everywhere, but just you have to keep your eyes open right now. It's literally every day.
Got it. And how, kind of back to the origination of your guys' team and working with partners across the org, how'd you get buy-in? How did as you got some senior sponsorship or kind of looking at like, listen, we do need to lean in here. I think it was known the industry is continuing to evolve and other groups are being formed, but how did you guys go about that with senior sponsorship, and what did they want out of you versus what maybe you had in your mind?
As the person who was around, I guess I'm taking this one. Yeah, I mean, I think it all boiled down to just business strategy. This is objectively where our consumers are. This is objectively where our media is being spent. This is how people are interacting with our brands, and really explaining the why. So people understand that digital is important. Everyone gets that, but they don't always understand kind of the next couple layers down of like, what does it actually take? What are the things that are possible? What are the opportunities? What can we unlock? What are the insights we can find? How can we create better consistency? Those are all good things, and we've done a good job. It's not that we're miles behind, but it's really shining a light on what's possible, because I think oftentimes people just don't know what they don't know, and it's a little bit of flipping the lights on for everyone of saying, hey, here's what's possible, backing it up with outcomes. So we're not just doing this stuff and making decks, but here's an actual improvement in ROI. Here's how we've made, more efficient, creative, faster decisions, all of those things, and really mapping that out. When you do it that way, it was honestly a bit of a no-brainer, but it took the work to really make sure we were buttoned up and had the business case first, not just, we're chasing hype or whatever.
Got it. And if I can go down the line here, through the experience of, and I know your time is relatively new, but going down, what's been the most eye-opening thing thus far of integrating within the group, and as your guys' digital experience team matures and gets rooted within the org, what's been the biggest aha and or challenge that you've experienced thus far?
So on my end, I think the most exciting is how open the organization is to digital and how hungry they are to learn. So at the beginning, I started and I was like, okay, where do I start? Who do I talk to? And then now everyone's reaching out to me saying, hey, I have this going on. What do you think? What should I do? So I think it's really exciting that people want to learn about digital. They want to make sure that they stay at the top of what's happening and the trends. And it's very valuable for me to be able to share my expertise and support that area in the business.
Which is pretty cool for an org as mature as 130 plus years to still be hungry for information. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think for me the biggest aha throughout this process of building a new team has been the importance of vulnerability, because it's not an easy task to take an 100-plus-year-old company and build a brand new team with a brand new way of doing things. And it's a challenge. And we have to be open and honest about that with our team, because we have to hold hands and build the plane as we're flying it. I tell my team that smooth seas never made a skilled sailor, which is kind of a tongue twister. But it's so true. And so being vulnerable as leaders shows our team that it's hard too. We have hard days and we get through it together. But that's the beauty of it, because through it all we've grown so much, and I'm so proud of what we've built in just 8 months.
Fantastic.
It's hard to follow those two answers because you guys kind of nailed it. I think for me, it's building off of yours. It's not just how open, but how ready the rest of the organization has been. People have been open, but I think we don't give the broader organization enough credit sometimes of people want to learn this and they can. This stuff isn't, rocket science necessarily. I'd like to think it is, because that's great job security, but it's, a lot of this is logic and just learning some different mindsets and having some different tools in your toolbox. And the teams we work with, the conversations we have today would not have happened 6 months ago because they understand this. They're asking great questions. They're getting their hands dirty with this stuff. And that's the ultimate goal, is not to just create this, team that's going to do digital for the organization, but really to transform our organization into a digital-first organization entirely. And I think that's been the most eye-opening thing, is how ready and open our teams have been.
Yeah, I mean, you guys hit it.
Good luck.
Hard.
I'll start with you next time.
The one thing that I would build, though, is that I've had a lot of conversations with different leaders in our business as we're talking about ways of working and how the brand teams could leverage our digital experience team, how they can bring them in, and they're like, oh yeah, like we'll definitely ask them these kinds of questions, we'll pull them in for that kind of thing. And as we talk about it even more, they're like, but like that's just a skill set. Like I don't understand audience, so we have to go to that person. And I'm like, that person was not born an audience manager. They learned it at some point, which means you can learn it at some point. So I think that's been one of the biggest ahas and like this shift in mindset that we're working through, is just, these are things that you can learn. It's not something that's just set and that like only these other people over here do these things. It's how do we all learn? How do we all do it? But now you have some expertise to lean on to like, it's your phone a friend. That's what's different.
There you go. And so much new, pardon me. So much new stuff happening in the space. Stuff very specific. But you made mention of test and learn and needing to get out there and maybe fail with some things, but you've got to get out there and test and learn. How do you guys ingest opportunities to test and learn, and how do you vet them?
I would say one of the big shifts that we're looking at going into this year, and it's not crazy wild, but it's just how do we more intentionally allocate 5 to 15% of our budget for those tests and learns? How do we be really thoughtful about what we're trying to achieve for a brand, find the right brand to go do that, and actually test it and say it's okay to fail? And that's one of the things that we're working really, really hard on, is making it okay for us to fail and being proud of it and showing our learnings and then being able to move on, but not having this, let's do this in a corner and like let's see if it works, and if it works then we'll tell everybody. It's no, we're going to do this crazy thing, and you guys, it might be really bad or it might be really amazing, but we just try to be really upfront about that and share it more, because having that test and learn budget is really, really crucial.
Yeah, and I'd add that we're being very intentional about testing. I mean, we've been guilty in the past, and I'm sure we've all been guilty of this, of testing something for testing's sake and kind of not following up on how it did. But we're being very intentional, and we've built testing frameworks with the team that we're rolling out for paid media specifically, so that every single team has very clearly defined goals for testing, whether it's audiences, new platforms, placement opportunities, and saying, how are we going to measure the success of this? And it's like, if it works, then let's do this. If it doesn't work, let's do this. So setting that intentionality up front has made a huge difference in how much value we get out of these tests.
Our boss often tells us to call our shot. And I think that's a good way to think about it, is don't just say, I'm going to do a test. Say, I'm going to do this, and I think this is what's going to happen, and have the courage to really say, yeah, we're going to do this, and then find out. But you have to have that in mind.
That's great, and I like the vulnerability that you spoke about earlier, kind of coming through in that too, being upfront about it and taking the shot. I'm sure you seeded a couple questions from some of the fan group in the back, but does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask the crew up here for J&J?
Hey, this is a non-seeded question.
So, Elisa, you mentioned some of the things that have made you affect a campaign. I know there's just so much you could say, but what were some of the little bit more specifics of the learnings in order to move out? Was it derived from surveys from consumers, or what specifically led, we're going to adjust this to do this to get the result we want?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And to Tyler's point, we have put together some frameworks and defined what are the KPIs that have a positive impact on the results that we're trying to achieve. So we really, when we're planning the campaign, we really need to identify what those KPIs are, and then we look to them to see what's working and what's not working. It can depend by the campaign. Sometimes we want to drive brand awareness, other times we want to drive more action. So based on how those are trending, we can go in and say, okay, this is underperforming. Let's do a deeper dive and understand why, what's going on. To what I said earlier, it was a Facebook campaign, so we had comments. The consumer was talking to us. So how can we quickly bring that back to the team, change the creative, change the messaging, adapt it, and continue testing and continue feeding all that information to ensure that we're driving the maximum result that we want to.
Awesome. Other questions from the crew? All right. Then I'll go with one more since we have a couple minutes here. We talked about different sponsorship and needing to have that the org behind you and things like that. Has there been a challenge of integrating within the group that you haven't spoken to today? Some resistance, some headwinds within the org that you didn't anticipate. For others in the audience who maybe are looking at companies in the first steps of this journey of setting up a team like yours.
I wouldn't say it's been resistance. I think there are challenges that are inherent with any big change. That's to be expected. I think one that is really important is it's not just our organization. It's literally every organization we work with that we have to consider how we work with them, who does what does that workflow look like. So we've worked really closely with our media agency. We've worked really closely with our creative agencies, our power partners, because the ways of working are changing. If we could create the greatest organization, and I'd like to think that we did, but if our partners aren't set up to work with us in the same way, it just turns into a giant bottleneck, and the output will not change. So I think that's the biggest thing that it was absolutely considered, but I don't know that anyone realized the scale of how much we'd have to dive in and really work together to collaboratively figure out, okay, we're going to work in a certain way. How do we need to work with a media buyer? It's different. I'll leave it at that, but it's very different.
Yeah, and I would almost flip it to what's working in the organization that has really been tailwinds for us. And one of the things that I think has been really powerful and is really wonderful at Johnson & Johnson is that we have our credo, which tells us where we start, which is we're serving the moms, the nurses, the babies, the parents, the dads. We're serving the people that are using our products every day to enrich their lives. And that's the thing that really pulls us together. So we have a North Star. We know where we're going. We know who we're serving. And that really guides us in, well, okay, if we want to work with a media buyer differently, what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to communicate to the consumer? What are we trying to bring to life? And that's really, really helpful for us. So I would say that's our tailwind. Having a North Star of how this all comes together is what can bring us together. It's what keeps our organization saying oh yeah, we're all these different teams, but we're still trying to achieve the same goal. And being able to bring that to life has been a huge tailwind for us. And I'd also like to think we brought in some really cool people with great expertise. So it doesn't hurt that we're having fun, we're building a culture, and we can do that uniquely within Johnson & Johnson. But overall, we have a North Star, and that's the thing that we're all trying to go to. We're not trying to do something different in the digital experience team.
Love that, and thank you guys for your candor today, coming up and doing this and giving us a peek behind the brand with Johnson & Johnson and your guys' experience in growing this group. We really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.